Welcome to Insights into Success. We're with your host Paul Dodds. We hope to educate, inspire and motivate you to achieve your own personal success. We talk to guests from all around the world from a variety of walks of life to hear the realities of their own journey to success. What challenges have they faced? How have they coped with failure? And what have been the keys or will be the keys to their own success? In our Read to Succeed interviews, we talk books that have inspired our guests, and for some, they share their secrets to marketing success. Join us as we give you insights into success. Okay, well, welcome, Jonathan, back. You've agreed to stay on and do a little short podcast called Read to Succeed, so thank you so much for that. The whole purpose of Read to Succeed is really to encourage people that, you know, there's great books out there to read and we can learn a lot from that. Personally, I love reading. I believe that every day in life we really want to go out there and learn something new, and books are a great way to do that. So I'd like you to share with us maybe, you know, one or two books that for you have really resonated for you and meant a lot and that you think could be of value to people listening or watching this interview.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on for this piece. Personally, I'm not myself too much of a reader in the traditional sense. I spoke about in my podcast with you about how I believe that, you know, knowledge is really currency and it's super important. And so I like to be able to absorb that information as much as I can. One of the most valuable books that I've ever picked up, and I picked it up by chance in an airport one time, was actually behind me. This isn't just for decorative purposes. Is Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss.
Oh, okay.
Now, if you haven't read Tools of Titans, it's for the millennials and Gen Zs out there, it's basically a TikTok book in terms of bite-sized insights into successful people's lives. And so It's not read through like your regular chapters. You can, it's like he has an interview with all sorts of successful people through history. There's many in there that more than I can explain, but he has one section on physical well-being, one section on business, and one section on financial security. And he talks to all of these really hyper successful people across the world, and he asks them their perspectives about this. And so there are only 2 or 3 pages per person, but I'm a huge valuer in perspective. Perspective to me is super important, and I'd like to expand my perspective or give myself more points of view. That book is a fantastic read to give you insights into other people's successful routines, into what makes them successful. All of those really golden pieces of information that, you know, you might try and grab one out of a podcast with someone. This is a condensed version of all of those pieces of brilliant information. I feel like my life increases in value significantly whenever I'm reading it. I'm just motivated to get up in the morning and drink the water and make the bed and do the workout and get myself, you know, meditate, get into the mindset. I feel like it's a fantastic productivity book if anyone's interested. So that'd be my first pick.
And can I just ask you before you go on, with that book, is it the sort of book that you will pick up from time to time and read maybe a couple of interviews as a bit of inspiration?
I almost read it back to back constantly. Like, it's one of those books where you never finish reading because there's so many great little pieces in there from people of different walks of life. And so he interviews, you know, from people like Arnold Schwarzenegger all the way through to Tim Cook. He's got some Steve Jobs stuff in there. He's got one of the ultra marathon runners from the US that's hyper successful and how he does the endurance runs. All the way, you know, across the board. There's just so many different personalities in there. And I feel like you can pick it up and start reading anywhere. And within 2 minutes, you've found something valuable. So usually what I'll do is I'll read it almost back to back. And by the time I'm finished, I'll start again and you know, keep going on through it. Because it's you always miss something. There's always more to learn.
Yeah. And because you like that book, do you read other books about other, you know, successful people to give you inspiration?
Yeah, I'm a big I think probably my favorite preference of book is like your fiction stuff. And so I love reading sci-fi, fantasy novels, and bits and pieces like that. One of my favorite series is Prince of Thorns. In that sort of space. In the nonfiction realm, it's all usually sort of that self-help book type category stuff. The second book that's probably been the most shaping in who I am and it's a little bit more of a boring one, but it is Dale Carnegie's classic of how to win friends and influence people.
Right, that's an old classic, that one.
Yeah. So this is the modernized version of it, but I really this is probably a book that closely relates my mentor from who gave me that first chance at IC Central and the founder of that business. And he is just a phenomenally humble guy, incredibly successful businessman. And the way that I shape conversations and build relationships with people, and how honey catches more flies than vinegar, and being understanding and trying to create that environment where people want to like your ideas, and really approaching business in more of a positive mindset. He embodies this book, and so learning from him and reading through that book really has shaped how I operate or present myself inside business. And so I think that book as well is a fantastic resource for someone looking to develop their skills.
And do you stay in contact with your former boss? Does he continue to be a mentor for you?
Absolutely, yeah. He's and I will for as long as possible. So he's still partially involved with the business as a director of NZIQ. Right. He's a heavily religious man, and he's taken up a religious post with his church, and so that's sort of occupying a lot of his time. But he's absolutely, he came to my wedding. He was, he's a really strong father figure for me in terms of the things that he's helped teach me and the opportunities that he's given me. I look back at myself as an 18-year-old and I go, wow, I wouldn't hire me. I can't believe he did. And so, absolutely, absolute respect for him. And I look forward to, learning more from him as time goes on.
And in terms of books, okay, what's your preference? Do you have a preference in mediums, versus audio books, Kobo, that type of book, or physical book? What's your preference in terms of way to read?
There's something really nice about sitting on the couch with a physical book and just reading through the paperback and then once you finish it, putting it on the shelf. And I really like that aspect of things, but it's honestly not the main way that I consume content. If I'm really wanting to indulge myself, I do this on flights quite often, is that I get the audio book and the physical book and I listen and read at the same time.
Really?
It's a great experience because you're listening, because they're reading the book word for word, right? So it's almost like you're listening to the story, but you're following it with your eyes. Yeah. And in terms of like immersing yourself in the book, it is the best experience, the reading experience I've ever had. So if you really want to indulge yourself, get the audio book and pair it up with the real thing.
Wow, that's interesting. I've never tried that.
Yeah, it's really nice. And even for fiction books, like if you've got anything in particular, there's an audiobook version, definitely puts you in the world on a whole nother level when you're able to kind of, listen, read, and it slows it down a little bit, maybe makes you absorb it a little bit more. So it's quite nice. Yeah. But most recently, the way I've been keeping up with most of my reading is through an app where it's basically audiobooks, but summaries. And so I can digest an entire book in 15 minutes with all the key points. And I've been, that's been a time saver way for me to be able to kind of still get my knowledge fix of the day without having to, put aside a couple of hours.
And does that mean that you tend to listen to those sort of things on a regular basis?
Yeah. Usually, like, I'll be doing the dishes, and when it's dishes time, the earbuds go in. We chuck on the 15-minute audiobook, and I know that I can get through a book. By the time the book's finished, the dishes are done, kitchen's clean, and I haven't even thought about it for a second. And so that's something I like to do.
And how does your wife feel about that?
She's watching TV. She doesing mind. As long as I'm doing the dishes, she's happy as.
Right. Well, that's good. So it works for both of you.
Yeah. It gives me a little bit of solitude. Get in the zone. Yeah.
And in terms of like listening to those type of books and that sort of format, how's your retention? Do you need to listen to them a couple of times, or do you retain it pretty well the first time around?
Usually for me, it's always like there's always a couple of key takeaways in a book. And so I really like them because I can get those key takeaways, or it gives me the sense of what they're trying to portray without too much bias from the author, because the padding around it can kind of make you think a certain way. And so it gives me a little bit more of a critical lens to, analyze what they're saying. So I really like it. The only bad part about it is sometimes because the volume of these books available, there's thousands of books on these platforms with the summaries, and some of them are like robotic voices and AI voices and stuff, and it kind of breaks the immersion a little bit. But anything read by a human author or a human voiceover, I find them great. Yeah.
Right.
Most of them retain most of their quality without sacrificing too much.
Right. Oh, that's definitely not something I've tried. So that's a great suggestion. So thank you for that.
No worries.
All right, Jonathan. Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Really appreciate you giving up your time to share with us. And I'm looking forward to talking to you again in the future. But for the moment, thank you very much for sharing with us on Read to Succeed.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time.